So this is a capo. When I'm not using it, I stick it on the headstock. But when I am using it, it looks like this. And the simplest and probably most common way of using a capo is to raise the key of a song so that you can sing it higher. Let me give you an example of this. Let's do Can the Circle Be Unbroken? Without a capo, it sounds like this. I was standing by the window on one cold and cloudy day. And now let's just choose a fret at random. Let's do capo 3. And I'm going to use the same chord shapes that I just used, but now I'm going to pretend that the capo is the nut, or rather the fret wire, just the side of the capo is the nut. So I'm going to count up 1, 2 frets and grab my A chord right here, 2 frets higher than the capo. Now the A sounds like this. And here's what the first line sounds like. I was standing by the window on one cold and cloudy day. See how I had to sing that higher and my chords sounded higher? So this is one of the reasons why guitar, in some ways, is easier to learn than the piano. On the piano, if you want to change the key, you have to learn all new chord shapes. But on the guitar, you just stick this here clampy thingy on and you are good to go. So here's some tips for happy capo placement. Okay, first of all, don't tweak the strings. If you're sloppy, the strings are going to get shoved all cattywampus like this, and it's going to throw your guitar wildly out of tune. See how the first string is shoved down right to the edge of the fretboard? No matter what kind of capo you have, start by laying the rubber bar flat across the strings like this, and then clamp it down so that the force of the bar is applied straight down on top of the strings. Right, like that. Once you've got it clamped, don't adjust it under pressure, open it up first. If you adjust it without opening it, it's going to tweak the strings, right? So open it up, get it set right, and then let it clamp down again. Second tip, clamp close to the high wire unless your hand gets crowded. So usually the best place to put your capo is also the best place to put your fingers, right? Right behind the fret wire, right like this. It doesn't throw your guitar out of tune as much, and it requires less force to keep the strings from buzzing. But some chords may feel crowded like that, and so feel free to put the capo back farther, but don't go much past the midway point of the fret or you're going to risk buzzing. Speaking of crowded, you've probably noticed that as you go up the neck, the frets get closer together. And also, as you approach the 12th fret, your hand starts bumping up against the heel of the neck. So that's going to make things feel more crowded the higher up your capo is. Pretty much anywhere up above, I think, around the 7th fret, you really feel like you're in Munchkin land and you're playing one of their guitars. And some chords may just be flat out impossible to play up there. Like the A chord, I can't really fret it normally once I get up around the 5th fret or so. So I often bar the A chord. Barring means spanning multiple strings with one finger. I can't get the first string to ring with this fingering, but I can get the other ones. So you may need to modify chords, or just it may not work at all to play up that high. Also, your guitar is going to sound radically different when you capo up really high. It's going to sound almost like a totally different instrument, which isn't inherently a bad thing. I especially like how fingerstyle songs sound when they're capoed up really high. But these are just 2 factors to keep in mind when you're choosing a capo placement. Your guitar is going to sound different, and it may be a lot harder to play if you're way high up the neck. No matter how carefully you put on your capo, it's still going to throw your guitar a little bit out of tune. And so I recommend retuning your guitar whenever you put on or take off the capo. At the very least, retune the 6th string, because that's the one that gets thrown off the most. It goes sharp. All the strings go a little bit sharp, usually when you put on the capo. Now this means tuning your guitar to different notes than you normally would, and so you're going to need what's called a chromatic tuner, which means it's a tuner that will tune your guitar to any note under the sun. not just the standard E, A, D, G, B, E notes that your guitar is tuned to without a capo. If you're using a smartphone app, the app almost certainly will do this, but you may need to switch the mode on it. You may need to switch it to what's called chromatic or all notes mode instead of standard or EADGBE mode. Now, if your guitar was in tune before you put the capo on, you can probably trust that the note the tuner identifies is the correct note for that string. It may just be a little bit sharp. But just in case you throw your strings wildly out of tune, I have a list below of the notes you should tune your strings to for any of the capo positions.